very warm welcome to Ecobari's fourth episode of the Southbound Resilience webinar series. My name is Arjuna Srinidhi. I anchor the Ecobari Collaborative. And as you're looking at these housekeeping announcements, I would like to just draw your attention to the Zoom chat feature. So basically, you will be able to you're most welcome to share any comments, any general comments, introduce yourself or say anything in the chat feature of Zoom. But you will also see a Q&A thing. So just the Q&A feature, we request you to use it to direct any questions to the panelists. So our moderator for the session and our in-house team will be monitoring the Q&A part to collect all the questions for the panelists, which we will come to later in the session. So with that, we will get started, and let me actually begin the session with a brief introduction to Ecobari. So the collaborative Ecobari, or ecosystem-based adaptation for resilient incomes, as we call it. This was born out of many rounds of consultations between various thematic experts, government officials, and a project around ecosystem-based adaptation that took place in 2020, 2021. And this led to us developing a roadmap for upscaling EBA in Maharashtra. And there were also thoughts around the fact that we need to have a larger collective, a collaborative to try and upscale EBA. So Water and WCRES then initiated this collaborative along with 8 other founding members that you see here. And the main aim of the collaborative is to upscale ecosystem-based adaptation, and for us, for Ecobari, to be a platform that can facilitate collaborative action through a multi-stakeholder partnership. So I keep using this term EBA. What exactly do I mean by it? So EBA refers to any action that has 3 essential kind of values built into it. So one is the focus on ecosystem health. The other is on reducing social and environmental vulnerabilities. And the third is to develop institutional capacities and participatory governance. So once these 3 values are there, we call that like an EBA initiative. And a very important aspect of the collaborative is partnerships. And so we have grown in the last couple of years to around 20 members, which includes both individuals and institutional members. And our membership is across the different stakeholders, which includes government officials, NGOs, research institutes, media, even donor agencies. And because we believe that it's through this kind of a collaborative effort that we can really achieve upscaling of EBA. And in that spirit, we have run several webinars, several training workshops, and that covers diverse topics like focus on agriculture, biodiversity, water governance. And that also brings us to like today's session, where we are discussing on communicating stories of change with the media. So let me give you a brief introduction and an overview of today's session. So following this introduction and this welcome that I'm doing right now, we'll have a little bit of a context-setting talk by Priya Pillai, who's our moderator, whom I will introduce shortly. This will be followed by presentations from our esteemed panelists, whom we're very excited to have here today. And we'll have time for general discussions and Q&A from the audience after that. So, all right, so coming to today's session then, it gives me great pleasure and to introduce Priya Pillai, who's the moderator for today's session. Priya is the founder of Word Matter Communications. She's the CEO founder of this and execution-focused, content-led communications firm. Priya has also been associated for a number of years with Gram Vikas, where she has built a digital-first communications operation, driving significant achievements in funding, partnerships, and visibility for Gram Vikas. And she continues to anchor the vertical there. So very happy to have you with us, Priya, and you will hear a lot more from Priya in the minutes to come. Priya, before I hand over to you, I thought I'd share a little bit about what motivated us at Ecobari to really do this session as a part of our work. So what does media have to do with EBA or resilient incomes? So to put this into perspective, this morning I was reflecting on something that's been sort of hot topic in the news of late. I know that's the details of the recently released household consumption expenditure data. And you know, as soon as the data, it's come after a gap of 10 to 11 years, and you know, as soon as this information has been released, I mean, three things that I'm seeing a lot in the media. You know, there's this one narrative around that poverty levels appear to have decreased. Of course, it's questionable how some of the calculations have been done, but that's the overall message. The percentage of expenditure on food has decreased, which shows that there is more, I think, disposable income things. And the third thing is that these trends are sort of can be observed across both urban and rural areas. The three key kind of messages that are being played out. But one interesting article that I read this morning had another nuance to the story. And this was saying that while the income across rural areas appears to have risen, the pace of increase in the income of farm households is much lesser than non-farming households within rural areas. And so there's disparity even with what we assume is like a homogeneous set of challenges for rural areas. And now we know that there are several organizations, highly respected institutions, NGOs, working tirelessly towards addressing these challenges of agrarian households. But how do their case studies get picked up by mainstream media? I mean, so are there these issues around income and employment are certainly very important, but are there less highlighted issues around sustainable livelihoods, nature-based solutions, etc., that needs to be heard and shared in the media? So this was sort of the thought in our minds when we thought about the need for today's session. So today's session is not about EBA per se, let me make that very clear, but it's more about how to leverage the strengths and interests of the media to get these stories picked up and ultimately get the attention of policymakers to drive, policymakers and donors to drive the change that we are looking forward to. So these are some of the questions that we had in mind. And as I was telling Priya, that a lot of the development sector events are often with NGO folks sitting on the panel and giving gyan, and a lot of the media people sitting in the audience trying to scratch their heads and see, okay, what kind of a story can we really make out of this presentation? But today we thought we'd literally turn the tables around and put the media folks on the spotlight and try and us for a change, listen to what you have to say and see how we can make this collaboration much better. So with those introductory remarks, I hand over to you, Priya, to introduce the stellar lineup of speakers we have, the session, and the plan that we have for the next 1 hour or so. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Arjuna. So on behalf of Ecobari, a warm welcome to each of you joining us today on what promises to be a really exciting and insightful discussion on the intersection between nonprofits and media. So we've spent the past several weeks designing this. And as we were doing this, one thing we were very clear about, which is that we wanted this webinar to have very tangible takeaways and be useful for nonprofit professionals, communications practice professionals who are embedded in organizations currently trying to crack this puzzle of leveraging media to amplify the visibility and outcomes of their work. So after much thought, we've brought together a stellar lineup of speakers, each of them expert in their domains, but also interestingly, each of them who has multi-sectoral experience in the sense that they all have at some point an experience of working with nonprofits, but have then moved on to work with co-media houses, which is traditional niche media or mainstream media, and PR agencies. We've got we've seen what they're going to present to you, and I can tell you it's unlike any other webinar because the focus has been on practitioners this time for us. So before we begin, I want to reiterate and encourage all of you to use the Q&A chat box to ask your questions throughout the webinar. Our moderators will be monitoring the chat and they will facilitate addressing these during the Q&A sessions. So now to begin, I'm personally very excited to call on board Robin Abraham, the current head of Watershed Organization Trust, head of communications of Watershed Organization Trust. Robin has been with Water for since 2022. there's much to learn from Robin's leadership at Water in using a digital first strategy, channeling the passion of his team, who are not media or PR professionals or don't have formal training in these domains, to use media to drive very tangible and clear outcomes for Water's work. Prior to Water, Robin played a pivotal role in shaping the digital presence of Ambuja Cement Foundation after kickstarting his career in digital communications with Web Chutney in 2008, and subsequently working with top brands like Lenovo, Bajaj Allianz, Tetra Pak, ICICI, and Marico. Robin's going to tell us, is going to set the context for this webinar by telling us the challenges that his team faces, which is a small nonprofit communication team faces in trying to get media attention and in engaging media to talk about their work and partner with Water to, help them amplify their visibility. So over to you, Robin.
Thanks, Priya, and thanks for the kind words. I'm going to be sharing a small presentation with you, which has around 15 slides. 15 slides is very less to be able to explain the journey that we've really gone through in the past 2 years. And of course, I'm just one cog in the wheel as far as Water's legacy is concerned, which is of around 3 decades now. So in that context, I'm going to be talking about the journey. And of course, as Priya mentioned and Arjuna was reiterating, I cannot share much gyan with me because there's a formidable lineup of speakers here. So I'll stick to the journey and the challenges that we faced along the way. Yeah. So it's been a discovery, to put it very frankly, and it's been a discovery because as Priya mentioned in her introduction, we are not a team of people who have core media or PR experience. So we come from different walks of life. Some of us are from core nonprofits, but to put it very succinctly, I think we are essentially Jacks and Jills of all trades. We can manage a bit of everything. And initially when I joined, and this is in 2022, our team structure was 2 + 2 + 1, which meant we had 2 people who were just focusing on audio video, because there's a lot of development work involved. The focus is on creating movies for our donors. We had a team of 2 generalists who could just about do anything, and the demands could be anything, right from creating a press release to maybe creating a flyer for a donor on the ground, or managing social media. So the demands were all across the board, and of course headed by someone who would most likely be playing a dual role between let's say research and communications. So what it essentially meant was that we had no PR and media specialist, and that was of course the first challenge we kind of encountered in the context of PR and media. What we were clear about, though, right from the beginning, is about why we want to hit out to PR and media, right? One is, of course, our donors are the reason why we're able to do our work. So we were very clear that whatever we do has to be in the context of our donors. And for them to be able to see us as a credible implementation partner, was very important. Just to digress a bit, we tend to look at our communications from the buyer's journey perspective, which looks at awareness, consideration, decision, and delight. And for us, the PR and media piece essentially fit into the consideration set. So once you've heard about Water, or you've heard about a thematic that Water is employed in, you tend to dig deeper and try to understand what this organization is all about. So that is where PR and media essentially came into play. The second level at which it was a fit was the delight stage, which is essentially once you started working with a donor, how do you create moments of delight or recognition for the donor, which was where we felt that PR and media could or would play an important role. We were also very clear about where we wanted to be, and we are still clear about that. We want to be the partner of choice for institutional donors to be able to address rural poverty systemically, right? So by systemically, what I mean is across themes, and there is a intersection of all of these themes to be able to address rural poverty systemically. This essentially meant that we needed to be top of mind for any of the decision makers amongst our donors when it came to our thematics, right? And our thematics essentially meant land and water management, climate resilient agriculture, livelihoods, women empowerment, health, sanitation, nutrition. And of course, now lately with EBA being the core approach that we are employing, biodiversity and ecology. So that's where we really wanted to be. So, as with, all fledgling institutions, we started looking for stories within the organization. That I think was definitely an advantage within the ecosystem of water, because we work across 8 states and across all of these thematics. So there is enough and more stories to cover, right? Or we thought so. Stories that we felt were newsworthy, but just didn't know how to really communicate it to the to media professionals. So we thought, or we would think, that these stories have a flavor of newsworthiness within them. But when we would reach out to the few odd journalists that we knew at that point in time, we would realize there is some impediment or the other which is preventing them from highlighting the story, right? Of course, this was a major challenge in the beginning. We didn't even have journalists to write to. So, so we had to start from scratch and really even look at building a database, right? And of course, we started with a generic database and then moved on to really make it specific in terms of what kind of stories do these journalists cover and when is it that we should be reaching out to them. Now, of course, of these many pitches, some pitches didn't, some pitches worked, many did not. I mean, I think I'm being very honest in terms of saying we also got a lot of beginner's luck. We had a research study that got published in one of Nature's magazines, and I said, this is an opportunity, let's reach out to the media. And we found that 3 or 4 media houses immediately lapped it up. So that gave us confidence, but that came crashing down with the next pitch that we sent out. So, so that was a learning. And of course, we also realized that the same set of journalists will choose not to cover the stories from you as well. So we thought it was all about relationships, but we also realized that it also has to be about the story that we are trying to cover, right? And of course, the realization, that you really need help. I was very, fortunate to have a board and an advisory board, which was very supportive in terms of looking at, building this as a vertical. And so we said, okay, we don't understand it very well today. So might as well reach out to PR agencies who can help us with this journey, right? And since we're just testing waters, you also tend to look at the lower cost end as well, right? And also as a function of the fact that we are a non-profit at the end of the day, we can't play in terms of big monies, right? So we reached out to a PR firm twice in these 2 years, in fact, different PR firms. But our experience was a mixed bag. I mean, what we realized was that in our experience with PR agencies, while at the very top, you would find people who seem to be clued in on the cause and the purpose as to why we exist. They were unwilling to really dig deep into what we were doing, right? And so rural development or environmental challenges were looked upon as from an arm's length perspective, which really translated into opportunities which were very weak, right? So we would get articles like, the top 10 challenges that NGOs will face in 2023 or 24, which really doesn't connect with anything that that we want to talk about. And what we also started realizing was that these opportunities, being vague, were also now translating into added effort for the internal team, right? The internal team is also chasing and trying to convince people internally to be able to participate and contribute to the media. And that's not really translating into strong stories at the same time, but it's feeding into this belief that PR itself doesn't work for the organization, right? Along with this, of course, costs were also escalating. So every time we were hiring a PR consultant, the prices were significantly increasing. But also at the same time, we also tried using a tool, in fact, and to be able to engage with the media, but with the same result. We thought we could reduce costs, but what we were realizing was that stories were not getting picked up, right? So that's when we said, okay, we probably need to own it at our end. And this was full circle for us, from a point where we didn't realize or understand how to go about doing it, to a point of saying that, maybe we have a hint or from our experiences have an understanding of what kind of stories will work. And maybe we need to be able to define our objectives clearly and say what will work for us, right? So in that context, we reached out to Newswire services. This was specifically in the context of achieving the objective of donor recognition. And when we reached out to Newswire services, we realized that we were being able to push across our stories to the media, especially on the donor recognition front. We got a shot in the arm when all these AI tools came into the fore. So ChatGPT and Gemini have been real lifesavers for us, considering that we are a small team. So in terms of understanding how press releases can be drafted or how they need to be sent out, what are the key core points that one needs to focus on, and this is where these tools started playing a better role, right? Also, we started looking at other ways to engage the media. And this is where I feel that as Water, we started focusing on a push-pull strategy. So the push strategy was, of course, actively reaching out to media. But the pull strategy was also to make sure that our stories are also being told across the web, right? And as Priya alluded to herself, I also tend to have a digital-first outlook. So we started publishing our own stories. We said we believe in these stories, and at the end of the day, it is about the communities that we are really being able to impact. So let's talk of these stories in the best ways possible. So if you would go to our website or look through some of our social media presence, you'll find that what we've been trying to do is essentially to be able to tell the stories of our communities in the best way we can do it. And what this started translating into was that on and off journalists, when they're searching the web, they started coming across some of our stories and then reaching out organically to us. So this was the pull methodology that we were following. And of course, the push in the meanwhile, what we started doing is we said, okay, the best way to probably talk to the media is to get a media person on board. And I think this year we were lucky to have a person joining us from the media industry, a young resource, but someone who is able to understand the language of the media and who has been able to build a sense of consistency and discipline as far as media outreach is concerned, right? Because earlier what we were also doing was that if we came across a story, we would reach out to the media. This with a dedicated resource focused on PR and media, we said we can go with a certain cadency to the media. So of course now the way we're looking at it is also that I think nonprofits and I think CSE, for example, has done it beautifully to be able to look at themselves as media houses themselves. So we are saying we are a large or a medium to large nonprofit as far as rural development is concerned. And we probably need to also look at ourselves as a publishing house and also give space to others to be able to publish their stories. So that's the direction that we've been taking. We've been taking small steps as far as our blog and reaching out to our stakeholders is concerned. But that's the direction we would wish to head in. So as of now, our team from the earlier 2+2+1, we've now moved to a 1+1+1+1, where each individual has their own focus areas, which is media and PR. Someone is dedicated to social media, someone is dedicated to branding, and someone is dedicated to movies. So that's where we are today. And as far as media and PR is concerned, it's also a journey, as I mentioned. It's not a journey that has ended. We're still learning the ropes of the trade, and that's why I think in the past we've reached out to Jitendra, for example, Jitendra who's on the panel, to be able to help us understand and navigate this space better. So currently our ratio, so to say, is 1:3:50. So if we were to reach out to 50 journalists, around 3 will respond, of which 1 will typically publish the story. That's where I would like to end in terms of a context. As I mentioned before, we're constantly looking for people to help us in this regard. But yes, it continues to remain a challenge, but it's a challenge that we see is not insurmountable. We're slowly learning the tricks of the trade as we move along. Thanks to everyone. Priya, you're on mute.
Thanks, Robin, for making this real. A lot of the time, as comms professionals, we feel like someone else is getting it right. We don't know how, what really the operational requirements are and the workarounds are. And I think your talk was very useful in understanding that. We'll talk more. There are plenty of questions that are coming. Sure. So in the Q&A sessions, you can probably answer.
Sure.
Our next speaker is Gopi Krishna Warrior, the managing editor for Mongabay, India. Very happy to call him on board. He's a very prolific environmental writer with publications in India Climate Dialogue, Forbes India, and Friendline, among others. Gopi's decades-long career experience spans diverse roles. He was leading communications in organizations like ICRISAT and Africa Rice Center, and he's also worked with national level environment and development NGOs for over 10 years. He currently serves as the Secretary of the Forum of Environment Journalists of India. Today, Gopi is drawing on his extensive experience to unpack for us the method in the madness of getting the attention of journalists and editors and the skills that a media relation persons in nonprofits would need. I think very, very useful to listen to him. Something that none of us know what really should be the profile and what really should be. It will throw his talk is going to throw light into what we really should look at if we want to get on board a media relations person, or if we want to upskill somebody within our team to develop particular skills. So what are those skills and how can that person engage media effectively is something that Gopi would throw light on. Gopi, over to you.
Thank you, Priya. I will, if you permit me, I'll just share my screen in a minute. I hope you can see the presentation. Yes. So good afternoon to all of you. So I'm just going to talk about role of niche media. So Robin said his success rate is 1:3:50. I think that's a very good success rate, Robin. I don't think you should be ashamed of that success rate. I mean, that's something very, very, very good success rate. I mean, all said and done, despite all the methods we put into madness, it is still madness, and you don't know what will click and what will not click. We also have to appreciate we are living in a world where there's a drama a day nationally, there's a drama a day regionally, there are drama a day internationally. So in that world, we are going with our small stories, very small stories talking about some watershed work or some women's development work. Nobody has the time for that. So in that, if you can make an impact like that, it's really really important. And the other point you started with, Robin, and I think I'll start from there, is that you said none of us were experts to start with. I mean, and that is mostly the truth in much of the sector, because and that's why maybe I'll sort of bring the discussion back to what essentially is to look at it. How do you understand from a journalist point of view, so that the chances of success. I'm going to talk about how you can increase the chances of success from your end to the journalist end, to the media end, so that your stories make it to the media. I mean, that's an entirely different subject, is what amongst all that we publish has success in terms of policy, in terms of public outreach, etc. That's an entirely different discussion, and maybe if there are questions, I can discuss that at that particular point of time. So right now, I'm going to talk about how can you make your stories reach us, like we have the gatekeepers, in every media house, you'll have gatekeepers like, and that's where we have to go to the Sachin Tendulkar mantra. We all have seen Sachin Tendulkar. I mean, batting, and there's his posters are pasted everywhere, and you will see it, Sachin Tendulkar batting. But Sachin Tendulkar bowling, I mean, it's less obvious. But Sachin Tendulkar has has something that other people don't have. When a game is going and there's no wicket that's fallen for a very long time, captain brings in, if Sachin is the captain, he himself comes, or the captain brings in Sachin to bowl. And what he does is usually at that particular point of time, one wicket falls, which does very good for the morale of the Indian team. And usually more wickets fall after that, Now, why does the wicket fall when Sachin bowls? When Sachin bowls, Sachin is thinking like a batsman. Sachin is essentially a batsman. He's thinking like a batsman. And he knows what exactly is going through the batsman's mind when he bowls. and he can catch that weakness and get a wicket. That exactly should be the mantra of anybody approaching the media, big or small. Size does not matter. Whether you worked with media before does not matter. Nothing matters. The mantra is you have to spin it like Tendulkar. Tendulkar is a spin bowler. That's why I'm saying spin it with the obvious other connotation of spin. But you have to spin it like Tendulkar. You have to understand what the media wants, what the batsman wants, and if you can understand that, then you make an impact with your story. If you're going to say, I have a story, if you don't listen to it, you're the losers. I mean, and most of the time, 95% of the time, the sector which goes with the story to the media is very, very happy about their stories, but don't realize that the recipient, that's the media, is not interested in them. So how do you get the media's interest? Now that's what is what we're going to talk about. And the tools to engage the journalists, I think everybody is aware, press release or a press statement, which is very, very important, because if you don't have a press release or press statement, and you're not going with one message to the media. So every time you interact with the media, you need to have one key message. And whether it's a press conference, even then you need a press release, because then that will throw the focus of the press conference to what your central message of the day is. If it's just a press release, you're going with a message to press. So the primary tool to reach the media is a press release. You need to have a press release. Whether you're doing it in the form of an email, whether you're doing it in a form of Twitter thread, whatever channel you're using, you have to use the press release is the primary material. Then the press meeting or the press briefing that you can have with journalists, you have the third and very, very successful is seeing is believing. So if you can take a few journalists to your site, and it doesn't require too much of funds. It just doesn't require too much of funds. I mean, and the returns on investment is very high. You need to identify the good journalists. You need to identify journalists who are interested, but take 4 or 5 journalists to see your work. That impact has a multiplier impact. You cannot do it with, you can keep sending messages to media. This has impact. The fourth one is if you can write op-eds, or you can encourage your own people to write op-eds in the media space. Op-eds are commentaries, which are just opinion pieces. And fifth, most important, should you pay to get media editorial space? I would say as a matter of practice, perhaps not. The good journalists will always be interested in a good story. And the job of any organization is to identify the good story, identify the good journalist, and reach out the good story to the good journalist. Rest the journalist will do. That means you have to make the journalist a partner in your story. If you say it's my story, if you're not listening to it, you're a loser, it doesn't work. So journalist has to be partner in your story. Now, let's go back to the kind of journalists that are there. There are the journalists who are at the cutting edge, the front lines, people who will come to your press meetings. These are the regular reporters, and they are just to understand how this strange animal, the strange reporter is. They're usually young and inexperienced when covering field assignments, because like in the armed forces, it's the captains and lieutenants who fight battles. It's not the generals who fight battles. Generals decide strategy. Same in journalism, it's usually the younger reporters who are in the field and attending press conferences, etc. They're the young people work on multiple stories, and today's pressures on journalists, they work. Some of them work on 3 to 4 stories in a day, and if you're working on 3 to 4 stories, you don't have too much of time to get your story in. Constantly trying hard, and even in journalism offices, there are wolves like me of my age, who would be sitting there and trying to run down other journalists' story and saying, "Arey, isme kya naya hai yaar? Kuch bring me something new." And they constantly the journalists are trying to help sell their stories to to their gatekeepers, So if you can help the young reporter sell the story to me, you have made half your work done, Works long hours, never cuts down. Works really long hours even before Narayana Murthy talked about it. Juggles all this with their personal life, standing in ration queue, coming and covering stories, etc. And not always well paid, So you have to appreciate that. So that's where you have to get into. Understanding the editor, old fogies like me, we have to do balancing multiple interests in the media product, at every point of time. We have to ensure that our product sells. Product people read our product. If you're not doing that, then nothing is of importance to us. We report to multiple principals, whoever they are, whatever the shareholders are, and have to find their priorities and ensure that their priorities are reflected in the editorial priorities, and prioritize news in the product. So your themes that you're working, which will be really, really important for you. I'm not saying it's not important in a larger national perspective either, but it may not be important for the editor at that particular point of time. Works long hours, never really switches off, and very short span. So getting your idea across rather quickly and without beating around the bush is very important when you're dealing with an editor. But the larger picture for journalism in the media thing is that media is forever working with keywords. So if you can get your keyword right, you can, biodiversity, climate change, drought, floods, extreme weather events, international discussions, water. There's a big water meeting happening at that time. You get your water thing. It sort of makes it'll get greater traction. And whatever whether you're giving a press release or an op-ed or whatever, has to link with the larger picture of what is happening in the world. It shouldn't be something that just sort of goes off at a tangent, and then it's very difficult for an editor to justify why he or she is taking that story. And it has to catch the editor's attention, it has to catch the reporter's attention to start with, and then it has to catch the editor's attention. And also getting the timing right. This is very important. This is a graph which I really like to show. This is Center for Science and Technology Policy Research at the University of Colorado in Boulder, USA. They have been tracking media, 126 media sources, on how they report on global warming and climate change across multiple years, across decades. And you'll see that, this of course is the time of the Copenhagen meeting, when the entire world was interested, December 2009, entire world was interested in climate change. And then you see smaller blip. This was more recent, the last one, and you'll see smaller blips in blips during Paris. And so what you notice is at every blip here is usually related to a COP, climate change COP. So if you have a good story on drought or successful work that has happened in Maharashtra with soil conservation, water conservation, if you can pitch that at a time when editors are receptive, that is at the time of COP, when there is a throughput of stories, chances of your story making it is higher. So getting the timing right is also something. So getting the keyword right, understanding what the journalists want, getting the keyword right, getting the timing right, understanding the framework of a reporter, understanding the framework of an editor. These are the mantras with which success, there can be greater success in your pitching process. What skills do the media relations persons need? And this where I would sort of spend a little bit more time than others. Yeah.
Gopi, can we come back to this at the end of the session? Is that okay? Because we've kind of exceeded a bit of a time.
Yeah. So do you want me to complete this or
we can we can, if you can run through this quickly.
This is the last slide. You want me to complete it or you don't want me to complete it?
You can run through this quickly. That'll be great.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'll complete it. Is it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so what are the skills that the media relation persons need? Start with humility. That's most important. I mean, if you don't have humility, then you shouldn't be in this field at all. Patience and good humor, because things are not going to go your way. 1:3:50, maybe 1:10:100 at some point of time. Reasonably good knowledge of the subject matter. That is very, very important. I mean, you need not be an expert. You can link to experts, but you need to have some degree of understanding of the subject. Reasonable authorizations to answer questions. I mean, you cannot be running back for authorization every time a question is asked. So you need to have that authorization. An ability to judge journalists on the merit and professional standing. All journalists are not made equal. So you need to understand the difference between journalist X and journalist Y. A reporter who's coming to meet you is not P. Sainath. So you have to understand the difference between P. Sainath and the reporter. And an ability to listen, very important, very, very important, and an understanding on how the media functions. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Gopi. Thanks a lot. We are going to take questions, lots of questions for you also, and we'll take it in the question and answer session. Next up, we have Shreya Adhikari from India Development Review. So communication is most effective when we know the audience we are speaking to and where and how to reach them. The method, the channel, and outcome tracking is as important as the content and the stories that we tell. So can we learn more about this? And Shreya from IDR is bringing us data that IDR has on these questions. And at IDR, Shreya spearheads their climate journalism, aiming to spotlight lesser-known narratives and simplify difficult environmental terms. She also curates and manages IDR's podcast. Shreya has contributed significantly to arts and cultural festivals globally and nationally, including a key position at the Jaipur Literature Festival. She will tell us how IDR is tracking the readership of their articles, what have been the outcomes, what does the data tell them, and what nonprofits should focus on. Very excited to hear from Shreya. Shreya, over to you.
Thanks, Priya. It's going to be a tough act to follow, Gopi sir, but I'm going to try and keep it short and try to. So he's given this really interesting point of view of what the journalist point of view, right? So with IDR or India Development Review, we straddle this midpoint between media and nonprofits. So that's where we're kind of coming from, because we believe the sector has knowledge. We believe there is knowledge in the sector. It just rests in silos. And it's important to get the word out. It's important to disseminate this knowledge. So for the past 2 years, I'm going to take you through some of what we've seen. As we've been publishing more climate content, some of what we've seen that has been working well have been things that break down climate terms, right? De-jargonize the space, make it accessible, or give this insight into what's working well on the ground, how communities are being impacted. So knowledge that you may not have access to in mainstream media per se. So this is what we've noticed. So say I'm going to, this is one example, right? So one of these stories, say this one, Rain in the Desert. This was basically about how this did really well. This was a ground up story, 400, 500 words, a feature that IDR carries. And this was by a grassroots nonprofit. And it basically spoke about, very simply put, how erratic weather patterns in Jaisalmer, while they meant that it was good for the ecosystem at large, in the sense it was good for greenery, it was good for cultivation, it also meant that some of the traditional and indigenous crops were completely off the table. So this was just, this one unique insight. Another one that kind of did interestingly well was this one about gig workers and the threat that rising temperatures pose to them. Again, grounded in this sort of urban context, but it did well because, the title was literally Too Hot to Deliver. And this was something that was published during peak summer. This was something that urban audiences kind of were familiar with, in the sense that they knew that it was hot. They knew that there were people working outside. So some of these key takeaways from what we've learned from this is stories that do well, they have tangible examples, they use simple language. I think there's enough research out there, there's more than enough knowledge out there. It's important to make that knowledge accessible, unique insights, and tangible takeaways. We at IDR feel that it's very important, to also see what the reader will take away from said article, or said content format. A little bit about who's reading IDR, and I'll come to how we're tracking this. So funders and donors, we know, are reading stories that they usually don't have access to on a daily. So the stories that I spoke about, right? Community narratives from the ground, insights into how climate's impacting people at the ground level. We know policymakers and other nonprofit leaders are reading what their peers are putting out. Our newsletters, we know, largely cater to donors, HNI, nonprofit leaders. We know where all to engage with different sets of our readers, some of which is written down: younger donors on LinkedIn, younger students trying to enter the space, the development space, on Instagram. This is because we track engagement and reach of our articles through Google Ads and digital platforms. So we've truly invested in having strong SEO optimization at the back end. Every time we publish an article, we get keywords, and that's how we decide. That's how we decide what the title is going to be, what the blurb is going to be, and we also keep in touch. I feel like that's very important. We also share a lot of this data with the authors, and ask them to see if they've received any feedback or inputs post publishing the piece, right? So this is some of what I've told you in this slide, we know anecdotally as well, because we keep in touch with this network of people. In some cases, contributors have honestly come back and told us that publishing on IDR has led to an opportunity to engage with funders and advisors in policy shifts and cross-learning in the sector. So honestly, for us, tracking data is important because for us, knowledge dissemination is important, right? Reading is the first step. We track how much time people are spending on our website because it's important for us to know what's working and what's not working, in case there's something that we need to change. So we often, like almost every week, we come together. There's a data sharing that happens about what's worked well in the week, what's not worked well, what our numbers are, and yeah, we reflect on that, and then we kind of figure what we need to change or what we don't need to change. Another thing that I want to share, we also publish under a Creative Commons license, again, linking back to the goal of knowledge dissemination, right? The idea is to get to a larger audience. And we also actively pitch articles to mainstream media. So 2 out of 3 RER articles will be found on mainstream media. So at the end of the day, for nonprofits, I think it really boils down to what is the objective of what you want to communicate and what's the best platform to make it happen, right? This will decide that the platform, the medium of communication, the frequency of communication, and the resources that you put behind it. Say you're a 1-year-old organization, and you want to build a brand as an expert in a particular field. The first question that you need to ask is, do you have tangible learnings and takeaways at this point? And therefore, does it make sense for you to be publishing a piece? And in order to be building this brand, 1 piece or 2 pieces or 3 pieces are not what's going to shift the needle. It will be important to have a full SCOM strategy on board, because you will also need to see where all you need to be present. Maybe a nonprofit leader needs to be at conferences, right? And a lot of times, nonprofits are stretched for resources. So it boils down to what your objective is. Maybe say a 5-year goal is to be visible in some spaces, right? So what your objective is, what your mission, vision, and goals are, that's kind of key. And say for a grassroots nonprofit, focused on community mobilization? Would it make more sense to publish on a regional publication, or would it make more sense to reach, say, an idea? If a nonprofit wanted to engage with a larger sector, perhaps IDR would make more sense. But say for regional publication has more of that teeth within the ground, where that's happening, what's happening. So, that's a toss-up, and that's a question that the nonprofit will need to answer, aligning with their mission, vision, goals, right? I would want to come to the fact that there is appetite, though. There is appetite in media. We know this because our articles get picked up, right? So a couple of things that nonprofits can do, besides seeing what their objective truly is at the end of the day, is identify what the story is. A lot of the times when we receive pitches, they are program specific or event specific. But if you have read, say, the publishing guidelines, which are available on our website, you will notice that we've already listed down some of the things that I've spoken about, right? Like tangible examples, what the sector can learn from what you're putting out there. So I think that's something that needs to be kind of tailored to every media house that you reach out to, how you're pitching and what you're pitching. What makes your story unique, right? Is it the place you're at? What's your experience, and how can you back it up? See again, and this is something that Gopi sir also said, see again if it complements or adds to what the publication's already publishing. I also just want to address, this gap that we've seen, that there's a need to, Priya, I'm at my last point and then I'm done, I promise. There's this gap, there's a need for the comms team and nonprofits to also be immersed in what the nonprofit is doing and the tone that the nonprofit wants to take, right? What I mean is, a lot of the times what we've seen is that the field teams end up having all the knowledge and the comms team end up getting stuck. What happens in this sort of gap is that the leadership eventually, just by virtue of having been in the space for a while and having that bird's eye view, ends up doing a lot of the writing, which makes this, this stretch, this kind of overworked leadership team as well. So this capacity building of comms teams needs to happen in the sense that they also need to be immersed in what the organization's doing, be aware of what's happening, what's not happening, and this gap that needs to be kind of filled out. So I'm going to stop here, and yeah. Sorry.
Hi, Shreya.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for making some very relevant points about asking what is going to shift the needle, and of setting media engagement objectives based on organization's goal and where they want to be and who do they want to be visible to, and many more other points that I'm sure there are lots of questions to answer in the session. So next up, we have Jitendra Chaubey, who's currently an environmental correspondent at the New Indian Express and a researcher and journalist with a keen interest in agriculture, food, and environment. In the past, Jitendra has served as a senior correspondent at Down to Earth, and he was honored as the Indo-German Media Ambassador in 2018 by the Robert Bosch Stiftung Foundation. Additionally, he is a fellow of the Earth Journalism Network. Jitendra will throw light on how to engage mainstream media effectively. Over to you, Jitendra.
Thank you, Priya. And I think Gopi has explained so well that I'm left with very few content. And Gopi will realize that I'm going to repeat his thing that, but I have an experience of both, that I earlier worked with a Down to Earth that is totally funded by non-profit, and the whole focus of a Down to Earth is on non-developmental and environmental works which being done by the NGOs and all. So now shifting to a mainstream thing is very, for me, it's a very challenging, and I realize that it is a very much different from what I used to doing in that, doing in that at Down to Earth. So I would like to just give a few points that the questions, the pointer you have shared, Priya. That based on that, I am going to give some thoughts on it. That we have to first understand that nature of a mainstream media is a completely different. We are here trying to chase news every time. We are going to chase news in a real time, just like a 24-hour news channel. They have to engage their audience 24 hours. So we are almost like that. We have to chase everything in a real time, and we are already a hard pressed time. But the digital things has come up, which it further squeezed us. That every time you have to write for the online thing, you have to write copy for the newspaper, maybe 2 3 copies in a day or something like that. So we are always in the rush, uh, and as always we hardly do any follow up to a story, or don't have a space for it also. So here, I think some mainstream digital media has come up, like a Mongabay or The Wire and Scroll and all. They take that space which where a newspaper has left. So these websites now do a following up story, focusing on some environmental work or developmental work, which many non-profits are doing, and also come up with a hard-hitting analysis. So this is the framework which I'm going to discuss and give some few points. So when you ask the such question where how a non-profit stand out with its pitches, so I would like to respond that you have to engage with news item or pitches in and around of the daily development. For example, Gopi has already said that non-profit should always be ready with their key words and timing of that. For example, I will give you an example that when electoral bond struck down, that few of the non-profits or some of the non-profits got so much of media attention because either they were engaged with that, arguing against that bond, and like an ADR, they got a space in writing a column, and they got lots of coverage. For similarly, that recently the government has launched one solar program. So I saw that few of the NGOs which were engaged in solar energy, promotion of solar energy related thing, they got lots of attention. So I'm agree with that Gopi that timing is a very important thing. So I'm just giving you one idea to the WOTR colleague that the upcoming summer, we already set into that summer, is going to be hard-hitting summer because of El Nino impact is so high. So there would be a drought-like condition and the water crisis would be like that. If you're ready with that kind of a pitches, that how it is impacting and how the WOTR is helping in overcoming those kind of a crisis, would really help you. So the timing is a very important. And see, as a newspaper, our main focus is a political thing that anything would happen to governing party or government, it is our primary news. So the other news is always get back on that, used as a filler for the filler as the page. When you ask about that, what should be the different pathways a non-profit should build to ongoing relationship with the reporters or editor. So here I would like to share my experience that to my mind, editor of mainstream media is have a very limited knowledge about nuances of the developmental works basically. So here I also face such a challenges where my editor has a very limited knowledge about the forest and something like water and air pollution. It is their understanding of the environment where I have to take it further, scale it further. So I have to do a very hard work to convince them that there are more than that also. So here, I would suggest that better to get in touch with the local reporters, local correspondents, and map your region where your work is going on, and arrange the visit for that local correspondent and all, and keep feeding them that with whatever the new things you are doing, how it is impacting the life. And beside that, you have to also analyze some mainstream newspaper or media or whatever, that what are they interested in your subject or not. This is also a challenge. If you take up your work with a I don't want to take a media name, but few media, they are not interested in this kind of work. If you keep pushing them that they are not entertaining, then you will only get disappointed. For example, our newspaper come up with one positive weekly page on that bright side kind of a thing. So they cover this kind of a developmental works. So if you know that newspaper cover that, if you reach out to that pitches with the local correspondent or maybe timely with the editor, so they would certainly entertain you. They may ask a correspondent to cover that, and correspondent would cover, give a space for it also. So when what generally non-profit makes some mistake while pitching out that. Their always thrust is to come up to a national media and all. Beside knowing that their functioning area is very limited or some reason basically. So the national media, I'm also always not agree with that. Publishing from a Delhi is only a criteria. That national media is not very much interested in that kind of a thing, or space is also not there. So better to focus on the local correspondence, local regional edition of that newspaper. Keep feeding them those reporters and editor to get their attention. And certainly, if time would come, they would reach out to you. These days, I'm getting a lot of call.
You have 1 minute more.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up. Yeah. So these days I'm getting a lots of call from a PR agency and all, and many times I get to feel that they are just taking some material from university research and all and passing it to me without moderating it to that what exactly a story is, and leaving it to that journalist to understand it at your end. First, you have to pitch it also that what is the story, what is this research is all about. So here I would like to conclude my point that uh, please keep in touch with the local reporters, local correspondent, regional editors, and keep feeding them with your works you are doing, not with the reports and big reports and all. Pressure is also okay, and even over a phone call that you can tell them that you are doing like that, you are interested in covering this. If you get opportunity to take them to a field also. So these are the things which you have to keep doing to get their attention. It's really a space crunch, at least in newspaper. It's really very much a space crunch. We hardly get a space for many.
Yeah. Thanks, Jitendra, for telling us, helping us understand more about the constraints within which mainstream media works, and the effort that nonprofits have to put in really understanding what their focus is and in establishing relationships with regional, local journalists and the editors. We are now moving on for our last segment to addressing something that's emerged a lot in the recent years, which is public relations. Public relations today is for nonprofits is not just about media coverage. It's evolved today to an approach to building relationships, fostering trust, and creating an environment where nonprofits, if they use it well, can drive meaningful visibility. Although, as Robin said at the beginning, that the experience was not very rewarding for Water, but there are, in the larger nonprofit ecosystem, there are nonprofits who are trying to make an effort, right? So we also felt the need to bring on board a speaker, an expert speaker, who can help all of us here understand this beast a bit more. And we are going to have Jitendra Jha, head of 3M Media Works, a firm offering tailored PR and strategic brand communication solutions, as our next speaker. He was a former senior vice president at India's top PR consultancy. He has managed projects across sectors like FMCG, auto, sports, pharma, and manufacturing. And Jitendra, when we were discussing, when we were planning this webinar, would always tell us that it's important for brands and especially non-profit brands to give focus on the core message, on their core message, and to consistently go to the market with that message. So consistency being the focus point, and to play the long game and to not expect immediate short-term benefits. So I welcome Jitendra to speak on engaging PR for nonprofits for amplifying visibility and impact. Jitendra, we have 7 minutes.
Yeah, got it. I understood. Yeah, already on about time. No problem.
Yeah,
I'll
thanks.
quickly take you all through whatever So you have heard both the sides now, and so PR agencies usually are a bridge between both the sides. Okay, so you've heard how challenging it is for media, and then you've heard Robin also. It has been very challenging to work with what he's expecting. So broadly, let me just jump to this and give you a little idea about answering some questions. So everybody has this thing. What does actually a PR agency do? So So if you have to bring everything and summarize what a PR agency does, is basically define, design, and deliver. Now, while define, everybody could say that we can do it, and we understand our objectives, our communication goals, but there is always the other side. When you are in the thick of the things, what happens is that you tend to go not deep delve into it, and then you come out with something that really does not resonate with the other side. So designing and designing and format that will actually work. And the other side, when I mean your objective is that you are using media as a platform. You have to be very, very clear about what you are doing. You are using their platform to be able to you reach out to your target audience. That is the larger set that you want to reach out to. So you might as well be in sync with what the media wants, rather than push your own agenda. That's the way it really works. And delivering is one very important thing. Everybody has an idea. Everybody says that they can do it. But at the end of the day, if it is not executed, all the effort, all the time, all the energy that you put in gets wasted. So all your project deliveries that happen, and there is an impact that you see on the ground, has to be converted into what people read about it. Bring that human interest, that human touch to the story. That's very important to do that. So it's very important to understand one very, very broad factor, that this is a normal format of how a PR agency works. But the success of a PR agency will only happen, when you involve the PR agency in your developmental stage. If you, don't involve them at the developmental stage and use them as an extended arm, where you saying that, this is what we want to deliver, this is what we want to achieve, you will always find there is short, you are falling short of something out there, and the result might not be what you desire. Okay, now what's happened here? It's not. Sorry, give me 1 second. Yeah. So basically, what should you look for? So there are key factors, and if you have these things brought together in one place, I think you've got a good partner in the making. So it's somebody who has an expertise on the subject is very important. But you will find that that is very challenging. Not everybody, as a PR agency, you would find a team that is all clued on to what the social sector does. So if there is a team that is actually able to take that effort to learn and adapt, that is good enough for you at that juncture when you are really getting a partner on board. It is very important to get the senior resources to be part of your team, because they are the ones who've got that experience and the understanding of how it can be leveraged. So the younger person is usually, in your team also, you have the seniors who do a certain kind, and the juniors are doing the, reaching out to media and things like that. That is where, it actually falls short. They do not understand. And like he rightly pointed out, they pick up researches and then you send it to the journalist, and the journalist does not understand why they have sent me this. That is where you fall short. And that's where the delivery does not happen. It's very, very important when you're looking at a media house you need to look at the cost benefit ratio. So if you look at it, and everybody says that NGOs are always short of funds, but it's an investment that you have to look at, because if you are looking at building a brand that will actually pull in the funds that you require to do the real work that you want to do, then you need to invest in that. And the return on investment is always very, very important from any, be it a consumer brand or be it an NGO. So what have you paid for and what are you getting out of it is very important. And that's what you should look out when you are actually reaching out to a PR agency. So broadly, if you look at it from, what are the challenges that we actually see that, there is always limited budgets and unlimited campaigns. Most of the NGOs, actually work in that format that, there is so much more to do. And how much, where do we put a draw line? And that's where the whole challenge is. So if you're looking at a budget, and you need to understand, like I rightly pointed out earlier, was that, it is an ROI. It is an investment in a direction to build a brand. So any PR agency, depending on the size, reputation, how big they are, how small they are, they will keep changing their costing part of it. But if you are going to achieve the ROI that you have started off with, then you have reached home. And most of the time, NGOs actually fall into this trap, which is called as project-based costing and retainer-based fees. When you look at a retainer, you say, oh, I'm committing for 1 year now. Now, how do I make this budget? And how do I bring in this money? Anyways, if you're doing a project and every 2 months you're stopping that agency from doing that, you're starting from ground zero. You are actually making a loss in a project basis, because, then you are doing only so much in that particular time. And then again, out of sight is out of mind. It's a clutter out there. And both our gentlemen would tell you, Gopi and Jitendra would tell you that, there are hundreds of them who are reaching out to them every day. You need to stand out. So if you are not investing in somebody standing there and, making it work for you, then it's not happening. So what we have observed in NGOs and from social sectors, is that these are some are, every NGO has a different challenge, but the prominent ones, and that you can, if you have to sum up everything you put into one slide, then these are the things that usually are not there in place, and that's where the challenges start. So availability of spokesperson, resources, most of the time, spokespersons are not available most of the time. Turnaround times are the last thing that NGOs are comfortable with. You will take time to respond because you have to check with so many people and come back to you and then do that. That's a big challenge that you will always do. And more and I think that most of them they lack the understanding of media landscape. And like Jitendra pointed out very rightly, that there is a huge media set out there. There is the digital media, which is reaching out to a larger set of people. There's a print media. There is this whole regional media, which is closer to your home, closer to where the project is happening. They are important ones. And that needs to be extrapolated to the national media. But if it is not communicated at the grassroots where the actual happening, because they are the ones who can feel the impact of the work that you're doing. If they are not involved in that whole communication, then you will always find it challenging that, somebody sitting in Delhi is talking about, something happening in Jharkhand. It is not working out. It's a project that needs ground attention. So this is where, so ultimately what matters is, everybody has said this, and Jitendra and Gopi both have brought this thing. Ultimately, what matters is the media, the value of the content, what you bring, so like everybody has understood, and we are all senior people here, and Robin also pointed out that, digital first, and that's the kind of format that usually works also. What is very, very important to understand is that, everybody is looking for that appreciation in terms of, who is going to read your article and who is going to, get. So journalists very important for them is to get a byline for their stories, because they have broken the story, they have interpreted the story, they have worked on the story, done research on the story. Bylines are very important for them. And if you are going to bring that kind of value to the table, then your story has that much more. So the reader, if he does not like the story, that story never gets repeated, never ever gets repeated. So it is all about who is engaging and how many people are actually engaging with the story that has been done. So that's a very critical aspect of how you do it. And that's where the success of any campaign works. That's where it is. So I've worked under my 5-minute timeline.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for keeping time. With that, we are wrapping up our last speaker. Fantastic session, all of you. I'm now going to call on each speaker. There we have a few audience questions, and I'll read out the question and call on the speaker to who can possibly answer that. Robin, this is for you. Niti Kumar has a question asking, how does the team maintain continuous momentum instead of sporadic bursts of, creating content for media? So it's an operational question of if you can throw light on how your team does it, that'll be useful.
So I think so that's where I think the context of the team comes into play and how we're structured as a team. So with one person now just dedicated to hunting stories and sharing them with the media, there is a lot more attention in terms of drawing out these stories. On the other hand, I would also point to a lot of internal selling. So I think it's also showing a proof of concept to teams on the ground and to the management here. That a story does work, right? So once that happens, you also see more of a buy-in with teams from the ground themselves, then starting to share stories with us. So it's a give and take relationship in that context.
Thank you. Gopi, the question is for you. Mona Lisa is asking, what makes you reject a media pitch or a press release as an editor?
The first point is, I mean, if we have heard that story before, then the chances we will reject it. So it has to, any pitch that you come out has to have something new, even if it's a story that's been said before. I mean, you are talking of the same water conservation in a particular region. That story has to have something new. There has to be something new. It has to either should go out of the frame of reference that has happened till now before. It should have a new research finding, or it should have a new voice there. So it has to have something new, and that is very important. And if it does not relate to anything that is happening topically, then also chances of it getting rejected.
Okay. Shreya, the next question is for you. Another Shreya in the audience wants to know, what tools do IDR use to analyze your audience, and how can they collaborate with IDR for stories? That's from Shreya.
So we use a couple of tools. So we use Google Analytics to track what's happening on our website, readers on our website. And then otherwise we use Meta for Instagram, Facebook, Twitter admin for Twitter, and same for LinkedIn. We use the LinkedIn specific tool. How can you collaborate with IDR? We have first read the publishing guidelines that we have. That should really help on what we're looking for. And yeah, we have an email address on our website. Write to us at idronline.org. Definitely write to us. Please note that I know we've received some like urgent turnaround ask for this, but it does take us 2 weeks or so to revert. So just give us that little bit of time, and we should get back to you.
Yeah. Jitendra Jha, there's a question by Ishita Roy. She's asking, as a media agency, what is the best way to work with NGOs considering non-profits are resource-starved organizations and working under FCRA guidelines? So do you want to take that question, Jitendra?
Yeah. So see, for whenever you want to actually work with a NGO, it is very important to set the ground rules, and it is very, very important to set those ground rules, because the expectations have to match. So if there is a challenge that you're going to face in the future, bring it up there. So everybody, both the parties, are ready with solutions to that problem. So, so it has to be a win-win situation. It cannot be that, I did this and you did that. It's not about that. You are working as a team for a common goal. So the end result is what matters. So if you have brought the expectations on the table and the challenges on the table at ground zero, then there is only upwards. And then you have a long relationship that you can do with your PR agency. And they will also understand what you are wanting to achieve or what you are aspiring to achieve.
Okay, thanks. So we have Alka Dubkar, Assistant Editor at Times of India, listening into all of you. So Alka wants to contribute to the conversation that we are having. Alka, do you want to share what you have in mind?
Alka, we have just promoted you to panelist, so you are free to open your mic.
Yeah, okay. Please, please keep.
What she
Go
said.
on.
Okay, so
Hi. Am I back? Audible?
Yes.
Sorry. I'm in poor network, so not switching on my video. Quickly, this is a great discussion. Thank you very much. I have been a multimedia, multilingual journalist for 20 years, working in mainstream, quote unquote, which many people have so many objections. I think there are misconceptions also. So it is not that we are not interested in any rural India or stories related to NGOs. Sometimes it is too much of jargons. So there is a difference between NGO world, academic world, and media. So if that balance is made, that is wonderful. In the first presentation, I think Robin mentioned about branding, which was not discussed much later. I would give you an example of Pratham's Asar report. So with Asar, they have created a brand of their report. So if you could, maybe a small organization working in a very small, say, in a village, but with that annual report, you create your brand with that report, bringing it to different journalists. Third thing, one problem is many NGOs keep going to same journalist again and again. So and then once, twice we can give you we can not give you, we can give publicity to that subject, but exploring new journalists for NGO or people like you is important. It is not that only one journalist will give you publicity in Times of India and other will not. So my suggestion is expand your network. Networking is also equally important in all this exercise, which was not discussed much between media and NGO. Third thing is, it is not always that only we carry news reports or based on your report. Likewise, I just carried a report by chief author of the report. So I did not cover any story based on that report, but I requested the chief author herself to write a report. And then she explained it without without going into too much academic and jargon words for news readers. So you can try that if Shreya is capable of writing, or any of your NGO person is capable of writing a detailed news article. You can pitch that thing by author. Many articles are carried in mainstream media and independent digital media, so you can use that. Then I would request you to, as I think Mr. Warrior was pointing out, use new elements. If you're talking about Pinguli village and Kudal Taluka in Sindhudurga district, how it is suffering from water scarcity, you can use 50 years ago what was the picture, 25 years ago what was the picture, 10 years ago this was the picture, and today this is, in positive and negative reference. 20 years ago it was suffering, now it is not. So that reference point and comparison. Third thing, Google Maps, Google Images, any additional maps or graphics are always helpful to get attention from the media. And last one point is, I will just give you an example. There are multiple reports, right? So during COVID, I covered a story those who are from Mumbai know that Mankhurd, Mist area is worst suffer. We all know that. We don't even pay attention to the problems because we all know that there are multiple problems in that area. But somebody came up with the Mist ward mein COVID ke time, how people were suffering, and then we found out that how poorest of poor suffered in COVID, and that story was carried in TOI Digital. So what I'm saying, if you give some comparison, some reference, poorest of poor is some reference point. कि सब poor suffer हो गए, but poorest of poor, how did they suffer? And this is the report. This was their, this was their sample size, this and that. So use all these new elements instead of just bashing. Nobody did media bashing, but it is not that media is not interested. Really, there is a lot to look at every day with digital explosion. So we are very much interested. All my colleagues, we keep discussing it. It is the balance is missing sometimes, and if we can connect it through such programs. Thank you very much once again.
Thanks, Alka. Very useful. Almost like a panelist in another panelist in the webinar. Very succinct and useful. Thank you. Gopi, there's a question for you from Marisha, who's saying that we have found it challenging getting in touch with op-ed editors and getting any response from them for relevant or newsy pitches. What might be good ways to reach out? I know you mentioned in your slide a few ways to reach out, but a related question is from Nidhi, from Varsha, who's asking, is there a public database of journalists or news platforms that we can use to contact and reach out to them? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah. Answer to both. I mean, op-ed editors will require some amount of research to find out who the op-ed editor is. Usually, it's a good idea to, I mean, if you're serious about writing to Times of India or to Hindu, etc., it's a good idea to do some research and then go to their call at a particular at the time where journalists are usually they don't call at night, don't call early morning, but in the afternoon or so, call at the general landline number, and then identify yourself and say, I would like to talk to so and so who's the op-ed editor, or who's the op-ed editor, and chances are you will be connected to that person. Again, the point is, if you are getting connected to that person, you have to you have to have your argument laid out in that fashion that the main thing has to come out first, so that, because you're going to get a very short window of time. Otherwise, you can write to the editor. I mean, most of the publications have an editor, this thing, but then the chances of not, the best way is to reach out to the op-ed editor directly, find out who the op-ed editor is. Like, there's a gentleman called Srinivasan Ramani, who's the op-ed editor for the Hindu, and you reach out to that person and catch that person's attention. If you want to write to Mongabay India, you have to reach out to me at the India submissions at indiasubmissions@mongabay.com address, so that's where you can reach out. Public database, yes, there used to be a public database, but it's outdated. There used to be a public database by the Press Institute of India when Usha Rai was the director of, and she brought it out twice. The Forum for Environment Journalists in India brought out a digital database that also is outdated, because that is also at least 10 years old. But one way of reaching the Forum for Environment Journalists in India runs an email network called India EJ, which is an email network where journalists who are covering environment talk, and people who want to read journalists. So one way is to reach out to India EJ and ask to be included. You can write to me and I can forward that thing to India EJ, and you ask to be included, in which case you are in touch with a whole lot of journalists in this line of work.
Thanks, Gopi. Jitendra Chaube, we'll wrap it up with a question. There are many more questions, some of which we don't have time. So maybe we will try and get the answers from the expert speakers, and we will send you an email. But the last question, you did mention, you did speak about, the importance of establishing relationships with regional local journalists, who is most proximate to the work of the nonprofit. And there are questions they're asking on how to, similar to what was asked to Gopi, how does one identify them? How do you reach out to them? And how do you establish this relationship? What is the mechanism?
See, you read a newspaper or you watch TV every day, right? You know the media, it is being broadcast to your house or in your office, and you subscribe to any newspaper. There will be certainly Maharashtra is the biggest, for example, Maharashtra. If this organization is working in a Pune, there must be a Pune, offices in Pune of a different newspapers, right? So you have to give us do some legwork to reach out to those offices, directly reach out to reporters and all, take their contacts. Don't bother them too much, otherwise they get fed up. Just to push your ideas to them that you are doing this. Are you interested in covering it or not? Do you like to cover it or not? So this kind of a thing you have to do. You have to build something so that regional media cannot ignore you on the issues which you are working on. If you are genuinely working on, they will certainly regard you. Okay, people are genuine people, right? Once a PR person, I have published one University of Anglia report on climate change and all. So he took me as a granted and shared me one paper which was maybe 2 months back published. I don't know why did he take me to that. So somehow whenever I pitch to that editor, I have to Google it and whether it has published or not. Then I block that guy that no, I'm not going to entertain you. So these are the things which you have to be careful about the reporters, because we meet so many of people. We know that in one line we can judge you that whether you're speaking true or false or what you are basically. So our job is like that also. So this is the tips you can use it in reaching out to that local regional media offices. Yeah, I'm done.
So thanks, Jitendra. So thank you, everyone, all of you who came on board to share your experience and expertise. And thanks to the wonderful audience who sent lots of questions. Apologies that we could not answer all of them. We'll think through a way to get back to you post the webinar if we can address some of them and respond back, maybe a blog or maybe email, but we'll figure that out. This was a very, very useful webinar. As a comms professional myself, I have a lot of takeaways from this session on how to operationalize a media, the importance of getting a dedicated media person in a comms team and what benefits it can give, the reassurance that Gopi says about 1:3:50 being good, and what matters is to try, the effort that you make and to keep trying, because it is madness, and it's not like we are not figuring out that madness. It is mad, and there is still no one system to approach it. To Shreya saying, telling us very useful things about talking in simple language, and that's definitely a strong challenge that most nonprofit professionals face, and the importance of what data can do and tracking that to make it useful. To Chobe's insistence on stress on making the effort to do the research and build the relationship with regional journalists who are most proximate to your work, and to Jitendra's very insightful talk on how you can bring up front what your constraints are in while engaging a PR agency, and see how you can build a win-win relationship, and of having a PR agency on board right from the development stage and not later as an extension. But many more, and Alka, who came in later and told us about, reassured us about mainstream media's interest and gave us very tangible examples of building a brand using Pratham's Acer report and, directions to do that, and what we should do, and giving us confidence of the fact that, the gates are open and we should make our effort to establish those partnerships. Lovely discussion. I'm going to thank you all once again. I'm going to hand it over to Arjuna to wrap up the webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Priya. And yeah, considering all the great messages and great points that we have to take aboard, I won't add much apart from saying that I think one very key thing that I'm going to keep in mind, which visually also is that, and circling back to the concept of EBA is what Gopi started off saying, think like Sachin as a bowler and his spinning thing. So now, as when we're trying to upscale EBA, I think this is an important one that, we also think in terms of the media, the general public, what are they looking for, and then spin the story and get to leverage the interests and the expertise and the strengths of the media from that angle. So think like a batsman, and then you do the bowling. It's going to be in my head imprinted. And with that, I would like to say once again, great thanks to Priya for the wonderful moderation that she did, to all the panelists for their expertise and for their time and patience with us. Also to my colleagues, Skan, Zahir, working behind the scenes, Marcela D'Souza, the convener of Ecobari, for her support throughout the process, all the Ecobari partners, and again, the audience for a wonderful, to making this session wonderful with your questions. Yeah, hope to see you again in a couple of months in the next Ecobari webinar. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.